invite you to please give a warm welcome to Rhode Island's hometown media hero, Bill Bartholomew.
Did you get your bunker yet? Show of hands, how many people have already gotten their doomsday bunker set up? Anybody out there? We've got one, okay. But most of us, we're just gonna choose the vibe until extinction route, I guess. That seems to be the move. We can all go down to the Providence pedestrian bridge together and watch the end of the world if need be. Does that sound like a plan? All right. I want to begin this keynote going back to the 1990s. Anybody recognize this building? This is an old textile mill located in the Eagle Square neighborhood behind what is now the Providence Place Mall. And it's a place where a group of artists and musicians established what is called a DIY venue, a do-it-yourself venue known as Fort Thunder. And this was an amazing spot. I mean, there was literally almost every night of the week something going on. There were shows. It gave birth to this amazing band, Lightning Bolt, that it went on to have international acclaim. And the ethos here at Fort Thunder was based on much more, in fact, not even really money at all. It was based on community. And in this environment, look, I mean, you can see this is a compact space. People were forced to be together at a place like Fort Thunder. And that means the people who were working there, the people who were living there, the people that came to the shows, the people that were engaged in any way, they had to have contact and physical presence, all right? So that physical presence piece, through that, I mean, you literally got to know people because you were packed into a room, sometimes, I don't know, 100, 200, 300, 500 people into a space like this. So you started to get to know the people that were around you. And through that, although some of the folks who were making works here, some of the folks who were coming to shows here, some of the people who were involved kind of in the orbital realm of Fort Thunder, they probably had different political perspectives. You probably had people who were anarchists. You probably had socialists. You probably had liberals, you probably had libertarians, even some conservatives were in the mix there, but the shared ethos is what dominated the conversation. Collective winning over individual interests was the overall theme of what took place at Fort Thunder. And because people were so close together, they got to know each other on an intimate level. And through that process, look, you build relationships. You build friendships, you build contact, you have victories, you fall in love, and you also have heartbreak. You have situations that end up being chaotic or elements of a little bit of conflict. As an artist myself, I've lived in New York, I've lived in Newport, and now in Providence. And time again, there's a phenomenon that happens where a building like Fort Thunder, or the building that Fort Thunder occupied, you know, it's kind of a left behind space. And then all of a sudden, artists start to show up and transform it. And energy forms, organic energy. Community is built. And the next thing you know, developers go, oh, wait a second, now it's safe, now it's clear, now it's hip, now it's relevant, so let's come in and make some money. And that's exactly what happened at Fort Thunder. It's a classic story. It happens all over the world with these types of DIY venues. Money's made, Fort Thunder vanishes, make way for a Shaw's supermarket that ended up going out of business anyway shortly after it opened. And they tried some other stuff as well. I think they had a Staples in there, whatever. The bottom line is that spaces like Fort Thunder are a glitch in our system. So why was it a glitch? Well, because it didn't prioritize individual gain over collective good. It was the opposite. It prioritized collective well-being over personal and individual profit. And you know, in the contemporary landscape that we operate in, Fort Thunder would be inefficiencies. People would say, that's what they'd say. They actually have robotics running Fort Thunder still to this day. But what they would say is, hey, you know what? This place doesn't make any money. What are you, crazy? I mean, how can you have something that's not turning a profit? I mean, that's not possible in our current world. You know what it reminds me of? The Airbnb crisis in Newport. Anybody familiar with this? Anybody stay at an Airbnb? Wow, very limited. Congratulations. This is a forward-thinking room, not surprisingly. Look, Airbnb, you know, you had a situation where people, I don't know, in the 2010s, they're like, oh, good, I can rent a room or an apartment out in my building that I own and make a little extra scratch on the side, maybe even turn it into a sustainable side hustle to put some money away, pay off my mortgage, to send my kids to college, whatever. Well, then rich people came along and they said, I like that idea, but I don't want people staying in my house. I'll just buy another house, and then I'll buy yet another house until Newport became so inundated with Airbnbs and other short-term rentals that it became a dark city. Literally, in a 10-year span, it went from a vibrant working-class community filled with artists to now, basically, just a gigantic, irregular hotel. The city and the state did a terrible job regulating it, and that's what you get, people prioritizing individual over collective. And unfortunately, when people are taught that nothing has value unless it makes money, we start to lose trust in each other, and that's a major problem. So cities, anybody get stuck in the traffic today? Have fun with that? Washington Bridge, anybody? Cities grow more crowded, but it seems like more and more, nobody knows their neighbor. At Fort Thunder, everybody knew everybody. I mean, it was by design, it was a real deal community. Our current cities are designed, at least here in Rhode Island, they're designed for cars, right? Everybody's in their car. And when people are close in proximity to others, but they don't really know them, suspicion grows. And that's what we're seeing right now. Yes, the digital connection. You know, what happened at Fort Thunder was magical. Almost every day, almost every night of the week, there was camaraderie, there was energy that you couldn't believe. It put Providence on the map on a global level. And social media wants to replicate this. When you sign on to Instagram or TikTok, they want you to feel like you're getting that same level of attention, but it just can't do it. It's impossible. In-person connections, they take work, they take experience, and sometimes they lead to amazing things like I talked about earlier, love, sometimes to conflict, whatever the case is. When you're in connection with other people in community and you feel their tone, you see their body language, we advance. And when digital life replaces human lives, people become more reactive, less empathetic, and easier to divide. Which leads us to a moment of political fragmentation. You know, when we lose a shared space like Fort Thunder, we become deeply fragmented, okay? Fort Thunder, there were definitely people that had different political ideologies in that space when they showed up to perform, when they lived there, whatever. Different political ideologies coexisted. But now, we are so divided that, can you imagine spending that kind of intimate time with people who are, quote, on the other side? And when people no longer share this kind of space, we lose that sense of us. We lose that sense of belonging, and we start to think of people as others, or even our enemies. So we can take this to the local level, which is where we're going to be doing a lot of this afternoon, evening, whatever it is right now. It's kind of a weird time of day, right, to be in an auditorium, but whatever this moment is, here at the local level, we see this playing out. Johnston, Rhode Island, the town of Johnston. You know, look, there was a developer that wanted to come in and build about 300 workforce housing units, you know, for teachers, firefighters, whatever's left of the middle class. And using a series of gimmick policy maneuvers and fear tactics, city officials literally shut this project down. They invoked the notion that, if you build workforce housing in Johnston, it's going to turn into, a crime-ridden disaster, and we better fence ourselves off from this, or who knows what's going to happen.
This project is the future Chad Brown of Johnston.
Strong words from Planning Board member Robert Pingiatori, joining the majority in opposition to the development.
I don't think it's feasible for everyone. It's just not fair to us.
We've entered a moment that we can define as social atomization. It's a process where individuals become atomized and start acting like individual atoms rather than part of a collective whole. This is where we are right now, folks. We have become socially atomized. And it's dangerous because it leads to conflict. So what are some of the specific dangers of social atomization? Well, the first one we're going to talk about today is loneliness. 36% of Americans report feeling serious loneliness, including 61% of young adults. 43% of young adults said their loneliness increased since the start of the pandemic. Well, that's not super surprising, right? The pandemic pulled us apart. But those numbers, they're profound. I mean, in fact, over a third of the population says they're seriously lonely. And what this means is that using our example of Fort Thunder, where people put the collective over the individual and found that connection in an organic way, people aren't finding that right now. They're being pulled apart. Now, loneliness, it has some serious physical health consequences, okay? In fact, there's one study that says that loneliness over the course of one's life can be as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Those negative health outcomes are extremely real. But so too, obviously, are the mental health outcomes. 41.5% of adults in Rhode Island reported symptoms of anxiety or depression. How about this one? Over 6,000 calls to the suicide and crisis hotline in the most recent data available, 2023. That was a 58% increase compared to the previous year. We are in a moment of mental health crisis. It's not just that people are feeling socially awkward, it's that the structure of modern life is increasingly conducive to social fear and avoidance. And loneliness and social isolation is in tandem with what we just talked about moments ago, rising loneliness. It's a cycle, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, this cycle as a whole. What's fueling this? Malicious algorithms. Now, social media companies, they're not designing their products to foster true connection, if you haven't noticed. They're designed to make money. They want to maximize screen time and maximize profits at all costs. They don't care if this creates an increased demand and tolerance for dopamine. They don't care if you get addicted. They don't care if it causes procrastination. They don't care if it reduces your attention span. And they definitely don't care if it increases anxiety, depression, and suicide rates. All social media companies care about is profit, plain and simple. And so what happens is we get this vicious cycle. Loneliness and mental health crises feed into people's need to go to social media, which plays into fear and hate. And then the fear and hate creates bigger profits. And then that makes people continuously engaged in the social media algorithms over and over and over again. It's a vicious cycle. And you know what? Our local media here in Rhode Island and probably across the country has picked up on this trend. They have started to parrot this. They've been doing it for a long time. It's gotten worse. How often do you turn on the talk radio station or watch the 6 o'clock news and hear about how dangerous Providence is? How often do you hear that? You know, the reality is that Providence saw a 10% drop in violent crime year over year from 2024 to 2023. We're at our lowest level of violent crime since 1990. But those sources that I just named, they'd make you think that when you leave the library tonight and you're going back to your car, that some, illegal gangster from Venezuela is going to pop out of a dumpster and stab you. He's going to cancel your Social Security on the way back home. And just for kicks, he's going to force your children to transition their gender. I mean, that's the media environment that we live in right now. They love it. They can't get enough of it. And guess what? People get afraid and they tune in, and the cycle continues. At the root of malicious algorithms is capitalism, hyper-capitalism, plain and simple. Now, with this comes a decline in our social compact and social trust. I didn't realize it. I mean, during COVID, I was shocked with how many people from my high school basketball team who are fantastic landscapers in 25 minutes became world-class epidemiologists. I mean, it was amazing, dude. I was stunned by, I didn't know how they did it. I want that ticket to success. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. So, all right, what does this mean? We've lost a belief, not only in expertise, but in social trust. And so I asked, really, the person who is the expert in this arena, Tom Nichols, who writes for The Atlantic. You see him all the time on MSNBC. He wrote a great book called The Death of Expertise on this topic. So we hopped on a Zoom call and I asked him about it.
That's what leads people to say, I can never be wrong. I can do my own research. I can figure things out that other people can't. You people are sheep. I'm enlightened. That is not only wrong. We all need each other. We live in the division of labor. We all need to work together to figure things out. But also, it is really destructive to forming respectful bonds with other human beings because, everybody is trying to be right all the time rather than to learn anything.
Distrust, personal attacks over the discussion of ideas, skepticism, fear, and hate. It's the opposite of what happened at Fort Thunder. People would dialogue all the time. People were accepting. People understood that even though there were differences in the room, in that DIY space, there was a shared ethos, community over the individual. That's the foundational principle. All of this leads to a moment of political polarization. I don't know if I'm a political scientist, but I'm a political journalist, so I love to turn to polling. The University of Virginia found that about 70% of Biden voters and about 68% of Trump voters think electing the other party would cause lasting harm to the United States. Okay. About 40% of both groups say violence is acceptable to stop the other side's goals. So, I'm reminded of a moment when I was in New York, when I was a part of an amazing DIY community, a lot like Fort Thunder, called the Potion Collective. And we existed in these mill buildings, the whole thing. We had this Monday night open mic where people would come from all around the world to participate in the open mic. Oftentimes they would play a song or do spoken word. Sometimes you'd get up and give a speech about something. And during the thick of the Obama years, I should say the rise of Obama, the Obama election, okay? I remember one night this kid showed up. I'd never seen him before, haven't seen him since. And he got up on the stage and he said, I want to give a political speech. And we're like, great. And he started talking, not about Obama, where even people who were to the left of Obama politically understood that that was a transformational moment in our history that needed to happen. And in fact, many people to the right of Obama felt the same way. But this kid got up on stage and started to tell us about why Ron Paul was the answer to all of our woes. Yes, there was some back and forth. Yes, there was some discussion of this libertarian sort of early Tea Party concept. Is that really what we need? And there may have even been a little bit of shouting. If that conversation took place today, according to this statistic, there's a 40% chance that that guy would be punched in the face. We've stopped dialoguing. We've stopped listening to other sides. We've found ourselves in an echo chamber environment, narrow-casted and afraid to open up our minds, and we see everybody else as the enemy. No matter what side you're on, you find it no matter where you are. Rising loneliness, mental health issues, malicious algorithms, decline of social trust, and political polarization. These are the dangers of social atomization, and that's exactly where we are right now. It's scary. You know what it leads to? How about Brexit? Remember Brexit? Of course. 2016, rising loneliness, malicious algorithms, fueling this notion that, well, we can't be together, we can't be a part of anything unified because our own interests, just like Johnston, you know, hey, we've got a housing crisis in this state, but it's not our problem. I mean, we're Johnston. We're not going to do anything about it. Brexit, a symptom of social atomization. How about this one? January 6th. There may not even be anything else to say about it. That image right there may be the perfect picture of what social atomization represents in real time. Conflict, war, death. That's the reality of it. But now what? What's next? This is a sea pod. Pretty cool, I guess, right? People are actually, this is a home. People are actually starting to move into these sea pods. I'm going to step out of the way so we can really see it. Admire that thing, right? Out in the middle of the ocean, there's actually some that go underneath the ocean. Some people are saying, I don't want to be a part of this social atomization chaos. I'm going out into the sea to live in a sea pod. Now, there's some people that are living in these sea pods. They're a little bit less paranoid than the people who are living in bunkers, let's say. You know, Mark Zuckerberg's building his bunker in Hawaii. Then there's people who are even more paranoid than Mark Zuckerberg, and they're trying to get to Mars. But no matter what the case, we're vulnerable because we're lonely. So now what? Dan McGowan, he writes Roadmap for the Boston Globe. And did I hear applause? Wow, okay. Nice, maybe they'll give me a free subscription. He had a recent article noting Rhode Island's 3 crises that start with H: housing, healthcare, and higher ed. We're not going to go into these in detail. Everybody knows we've got a housing crisis. Just take a look around. Healthcare, that's a huge deal. Now with Anchor Medicine closing June 1st, another 25,000 Rhode Islanders are going to be without their doctor. And higher ed, a lot of different levels there. Funding, conflict between municipalities and higher educational institutions. But I'd make the argument that there's actually a 4th H in all of this, and that's humanity. That is the underlying cause for everything that was outlined by McGowan and is really at center in how we plan our environment. Humanity first. I mean, Fort Thunder was humanity first. It wasn't about profit. You couldn't measure their value in dollar per square foot. Nobody was making any money making the art that they were making there, really. It was humanity first. So how do we advance the notion of humanity first and rebuild our social infrastructure? Well, we can stand up third spaces or third places, depending on where you read it. What's a third place? It's a social environment that is literally a spot that's not your home or not your place of work, but that has a sense of belonging, right? And that could be a lot of different things. That could be cafes, that could be music venues, it could be parks, whatever. I mean, right here, we're in an amazing third place, right? I mean, the Providence Public Library is amazing. I mean, look at this facility. It's at our disposal. And they're public services, and they foster a neighborhood life. And if we plan on an urban planning level with third spaces as high or higher than any other component, and we plan our transit that way, we plan our housing that way, we plan our open spaces that way, our health equity zones with third spaces at the center, and we have an engagement of municipal and local stakeholders with state and federal stakeholders that's organic, nobody's forcing anything down anybody's throat, we might actually see a massive transformation in the layout of our state and of our cities and of the micro communities therein. Well, here's the thing. You can't just build it. It has to be awesome. Fort Thunder was awesome. You wanted to be there. Who wouldn't want to be there? It was the coolest place in the world. That's why they turned it into a Shaw's. You have to change people's habits. You have to make it so cool that people just want to choose to be a part of these things. You can't force them there. So you teach relational skills, you reintroduce the concept of empathy and civic responsibility, and you promote interdependence as a strength, not a weakness. Interdependence as a strength, not a weakness. That's huge. Loneliness and stress and chaos, it can be absorbed by a collective. It does not have to be literally the weight of the world on a single individual's shoulders. That's a choice that we make as a society. But when you introduce that concept, you can organically get human beings to want to be around other human beings in the places that we develop. So we have this notion. It's pretty straightforward. Individualism leads to loneliness, which fuels hate, which fuels danger, which fuels war, which fuels death. The juxtaposition: instead of an individualistic mindset, we take a collective mindset. Loneliness becomes connection. Hate becomes love. Danger becomes safety. War becomes peace. Death becomes life. Isn't that worth it so that we can spend time sharing the good things about life together? And sharing those things, by the way, it's interesting. This is a sidebar here. You think about Dells, you think about where those trucks are parked. They're parked at third places for the most part. So follow the sign of the lemon to a better future, Spit out those chunks of lemon, right? It's a true Rhode Islander. It's not just about the straw. It's about, is there a pile of lemon at their feet as they're consuming a Dells? And their teeth have dug into that weird plastic cup. We'll talk about that later. There's some great news that we can look to right here in our own state about successful standing up of third places. Warren, Rhode Island. Here it is, Warren, Rhode Island in the 2000s, like much of the world. Thomas Friedman, the world is flat, globalization, manufacturing decline, population decline. Warren, as I was growing up, it was just a miscellaneous part of the East Bay. It wasn't a destination at all. And by the way, there was climate change, and Warren was starting to flood pretty significantly. And this is what Warren was going to look like in short time based on climate change. So what happened? Well, the first step in revitalizing Warren was to recognize this reality, and the market to Metacom plan literally moved hundreds of houses and tens of thousands of square feet of commercial space off of the flood-prone Market Street area and onto the Metacom corridor. So climate resiliency in action as a first step, accepting the reality that climate change is real and that we've got to recognize that it has to be a core part of any major structural changes we're going to make. Warren did it. And now their waterfront is a resource. It's an asset, not a liability. Next, you invest in community drivers, in this case, Hope in Maine. It became very quickly an incubator and a generator of ideas of a culinary nature and beyond. And Hope in Maine was a true third place because not only was it a meeting place, but it generated ideas, it generated activity, it reverberated throughout Warren, and in short time, you stand up a culinary scene, a live music scene. I mean, Warren's amazing now. Everybody been to Warren? You go to the Warren Walkabout on a fall weekend, or the Warren Folks Festival, or the Galactic Theater, or the Collaborative, or any of the amazing restaurants. It's one of the coolest little towns in America. 20 years after the place had suffered from a manufacturing decline, a population decline, and a potential climate disaster, stakeholders using surgical investment and a total understanding of the fabric of that community worked together on an organic basis to lift the town up, and in a couple of decades, it's activated, and people are interacting. I know this photo's a little blurry. That's because they're interacting so quickly and with such intensity that we can't even capture it with modern photography technology. There's another example, Central Falls. My goodness, Central Falls. Growing up in Rhode Island, I mean, you felt it. You felt pain. You felt pain for Central Falls. As a kid growing up here, we'd have soccer games, go play against Central Falls, and you felt pain. City went bankrupt. School got taken over by the state. But there was always some optimism about it having a bright future. That was always part of the equation. What does a bright future look like? Right there. The Pawtucket Central Falls Transit Hub just opened. It delivers commuter rail service to Boston. It also has a ripped bus. It's a multimodal hub. It has multiple options for people to get around. You connected Central Falls. Instead of it being a disconnected space, it became a connected space. Of course, when you do this, all of a sudden, people who live in Boston are going to say, oh man, let me go live in that Renaissance city. So how do you combat that aspect of a housing crisis? You stand up workforce housing. Attention, Johnston. You stand up workforce housing. Like the Broad Street homes, which One Neighborhood Builders was behind. There's so many examples of that. Mayor Maria Rivera and previous Mayor James Diosa, they led this process because they understood the fabric of their community and what their community needed. Now we've got the El Centro Community Hub. Private dollars flowing in, public dollars. This place is amazing. I mean, the renderings are nuts. It's not going to be Fort Thunder, but it's going to be like the slightly cleaner version of it. There's going to be community services there. There's going to be a senior center. There's going to be classrooms, a culinary aspect to it. I guarantee you this place is going to give birth to like the next big band from Rhode Island because they're going to be practicing in the basement. The El Centro Community Hub, it's a third place. It was stood up. People understood it was necessary, and they're making it happen. Central Falls now is a vibrant Renaissance city. 20 years after it was bankrupt, schools taken over. I mean, look at this place. And guess what? The big sponsor portfolio here in this state, they want to be a part of it because it's inspiring. It's real energy. Those are just two examples of how right here in Rhode Island, we're standing up third spaces at the center, at the core of our urban planning and our march towards the future. So how do we keep it going? Well, I asked a couple of key Rhode Island stakeholders, hopped on a Zoom call with a few people and asked them for their take on what third spaces are and why they matter.
There's an old saying, democracy needs a place to sit down. And I think what that means is we need accessible, welcoming public spaces where people can come together to make connections.
And if you trust in the people that you have, you work together to make this space the space that where we can all thrive. So I think that's really important for a state like ours. That's one of our superpower. I think that we're so close and can touch and build those type of personal relationships.
The desire to come together as a community is part of why people choose Providence. It's at a scale and scope that you can really get well connected, and whether that's through live music or live theater or interacting with some of our street art, there are these opportunities for kind of a shared experience.
When you create a space that people are invited to and welcomed, and the space is structured in a way where the community can come together and experience something together that's novel and engaging and complex and provocative, that lasts with the community.
Those are the spaces where creative futures are incubated, where the problem solving is happening, where people are coming together with the intention of being together, but not with the agenda of anything in particular, is where the best ideas come out of, especially with youth.
Couldn't agree more. And standing up third spaces is at the core of why Rhode Island can actually address the social atomization crisis that we face. But you know what? Rhode Island is uniquely positioned to be a global example for human connection. That's right, folks. Rhode Island can save the world. All right? Seriously. I mean, let's think about it. Look at our geography. Our size is an advantage, okay? We actually are able to stand up little hamlets, little pockets on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, a municipality by municipality basis, and actually connect with each other. It's like people think of Europe when they get on the train and they go around Europe. Everything's tight together, but you get to move between different environments, different spaces. That's a huge advantage to us. And by the way, when North Kingstown opens up their third space and their environment, they start urban planning in a climate resilient way, and they start building out infrastructure in a way that is moving the needle forward, residents of South Kingstown are going to say, well, wait a minute, we want a part of this. And then Narragansett is going to say, we want a part of it. Johnston might not, but everybody else will be like, let's get on this. All right? Our position relative to Boston and New York, especially as we continue to think in a transit sense on a macro level, all right? We are uniquely positioned in such a way that almost nobody else in the world is, between on the corridor, the most influential economic, political, and academic corridor, and frankly, artistic corridor that there is. We are front and center in that space. We can connect ourselves. We don't have in fact, we have no commuter rail to New York right now, and the Boston has got a lot of work to do. Territorially, all right, if we start thinking about Rhode Island in 100 years, think about all that's possible. Think about what we have at right there. It's not even our fingertips. It's too big for a finger. But it's possible to stand up an agricultural piece, an urban core piece. It's possible to connect these pieces by waterway, all right? By drones. It's all realistic. We have everything we need to be a solar punk utopia of the future and be a model for the rest of the world. We have untapped spaces here, folks. Go down to the Providence pedestrian bridge and look at what the Guild has done, standing up a pop-up brewery. There's also like an ice cream place down there. Amazing. There's so much more space around the Providence pedestrian bridge that is, yes, temporary because development is taking place there, but there's opportunity for these trial and error type of projects. Well, you're not going to find that in New York. You're not going to find that in Boston. You're not going to find that in Paris. You're not going to find it in Philadelphia. Every inch is just about taken up. Not here. We have a progressive mindset. Yes, we did the Senate just elected a progressive Senate president, and that is reflective, I think, of our politics in many ways. But we're not a dark blue state as the last election showed us. But that's not even what I'm talking about necessarily. I'm talking about, I talk to Rhode Islanders every single day, sometimes on the radio, sometimes in person, sometimes the people I love, whatever. And I'm sure you do as well. And there's an appetite to get out of this whole, this state, Rhode Island, growing up, it's the worst. Can you believe this person's salary or something like that? People are done with that. There's a desire to move forward in Rhode Island. It's real. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. People in Rhode Island are hungry for change that is meaningful, not miscellaneous, meaningful change. They want it. There's a strong arts community. Think about Fort Thunder. Think about what's happening at Analog Studios in Newport. Think about what's happening, as we showed you, in Warren, maybe Warwick as well. I mean, who knows? Strong arts community, strong academic arts community through Brown, through RISD, URI, culinary arts, tech. We have amazing meds and eds, but more than anything, we have a unique opportunity to be the global leader in the blue economy super sector. We're already in many ways, on that path as we continue to explore autonomous vehicles, underwater vehicles, smart bay, things that can measure the ocean, obviously offshore wind. It's endless. We can be the place for blue tech of the future, and never mind being the Rotterdam of the Western Hemisphere, we can be blue tech central in not only a global, but in an interspatial context. And as we've shown, we've got people who are willing to be earlier adopters than usual. Warren, they said, well, wait a second, we need to move the city away from the flood-prone areas. Let's not hold General Assembly sessions and hope that we figure this out in a couple of years, or like the Airbnb crisis, Newport, give it a decade, no one will live here anymore, but at least a handful of people will make a bunch of money. No, we have municipalities in this state that are showing us they want to be early adopters. Let's incentivize them to continue on that path and get things moving in Rhode Island, please, because there's an appetite for it. Rhode Island is uniquely positioned to be the answer to our social atomization challenge on a global basis. Let's do it. Remember this one? Now, a couple of things on cooler and warmer. First of all, you know that like the hipster Urban Outfitters stores of 50 years from now are going to be selling like trucker hats with this on here, and it's going to be like the hottest commodity ever. So if you've got any cooler and warmer merchandise, hang on to it, because you will be rich, very rich, I'm sure of this. Cooler and warmer, okay, I don't know if that really worked. How about this one? Fun-sized? You probably don't remember this one because it had a fun-sized lifespan as a campaign. This next one offended me as both a vegan and a proud Rhode Islander, the calamari comeback. Rhode Island, there it is, folks. I mean, come on. Social atomization is happening. Just look around you, feel it. We're here tonight in this room together because we have a shared belief or a shared ethos, or because your partner said we're going to this event and you're coming. That may be part of it too. But by and large, we're here because we all believe in something bigger, something beautiful, something powerful. And we're the exception. If you're in this room right now and you're feeling that energy of like, hey, I want to be here. I want to be around people. I want to connect. I want to feel alive in a real way. You're the exception. But Rhode Island as a whole, if we move things in the right direction, which I just went in the opposite direction. Hi again. If we move things in the right direction, folks, you're not going to need a sea pod. You're not going to need to go to Mars. You're not going to need a bunker with Zuckerberg out in Hawaii. Because in 50 or 100 years, if we work from an urban planning strategy that is attacking social atomization at its core, Rhode Island together starts here. Thank you all so much. We're going to do a Q&A, and also I want to note that thank you all so much. There's going to be some sort of interactive piece to this conversation, where if you have any ideas about how we can stand up third places in Rhode Island or support the ones that are already in existence, and how we can fulfill this goal of being a humanity-forward state. Not just a slogan, but in practice, let's work together to create that project. I'm all in. And I want to work with you, and I want you to work with me, and I want to share this project together. And let's move beyond being stuck. It's so over.